The Niners beat the Chargers. Chargers were missing 4 of their top 5 receivers. They haven't had their left tackle for, months. So the fact that the Chargers kept it close, I thought was, you feel pretty good if you're a Charger fan. So San Francisco was the better team, made some changes at half. They were off a bye, so I thought San Francisco was really rusty in the first quarter. You always think all these teams want to bye. Last year, Titans, number 1 team at home off a bye in the playoffs, lost. Packers, number 1 team off a bye, lost. In football, if you're playing well, you want to keep playing. So San Francisco, I thought, was really, really off in the first quarter. But here's the thing. I love the Niners. I love the Niners. I love Garoppolo. I love Lynch. I love Shanahan. This comes from a place of endearment, and I really like San Francisco. I think they're the most talented team in the league. I will say this, though. You know how I say the Bills are too Josh Allen reliant? Sometimes I feel like the Niners are too Kyle Shanahan reliant. Is that not every successful drive has to be brilliantly schemed and executed by this maven, this guru, fooling the defense, clever, schematically. Sometimes you just need a big play. And Garoppolo is good, and in my opinion, has earned the right to occasionally let it rip. San Francisco's defense, San Francisco's coaching, San Francisco's personnel is good enough to overcome a deep throw down the sideline that's picked off. It feels like sometimes they are so reliant on Shanahan's brain and that script that they trust Garoppolo with about 4 throws. And he's really good at those 4. And they lean on those 4. And those 4 work a lot. That game shouldn't be 22-16. Look at the box score. Chargers had 12 first downs. They're missing 4 of their top receivers. Niners on a bye at home. We don't even know if we like the coach with the Chargers. San Francisco, and this is a compliment, that Shanahan is so brilliant. Sometimes, if you go look at their first half and second half scoring, they're 24th in second half scoring. With Kyle Shanahan, Trent Williams, these receivers, Debo, 24th? Why? They need to let it breathe a little. Like, I wish Buffalo and San Francisco's offenses would get married and have a baby. And San Francisco would lighten up, and Buffalo would tighten up. I don't love teams. I mean, I like them a lot. But sometimes they feel incredibly dependent on the brain of Kyle Shanahan. And they should not be the 24th ranked offense in the second half. That feels like they're brilliantly scripted and brilliantly schemed, and this is what they do, and they do it well, and they lean into it. And then after half, they get a little tight. And it's like, I think Garoppolo's earned the right to let it rip sometimes downfield. And, in fact, Jimmy Garoppolo has the 4th fewest completions of 20-plus air yards in the NFL. You want to know the other 3? 2 Jet quarterbacks and Daniel Jones. And those teams are clearly managing those quarterbacks to some degree. So I can really like the Niners, but I do think sometimes, just like the Bills are very reliant on a star quarterback, they're very reliant on the brain power, which is significant. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo is earned the right to sometimes bring out the driver and swing away. You shank it, you pull it, okay. But there's a lot of talent here. That game, you go look at the box score, that thing shouldn't have been close. It's like why the Warriors are great. Steph Curry can be reckless and have turnovers and take bad shots, as the point guard. But Steve Kerr doesn't suffocate him. It's part of it. It's like part of what makes him great. And I'm not saying Garoppolo's Steph Curry. But what I'm saying is part of what makes the Warriors is like they allow for some mistakes. It's okay. Steph has these turnover moments, and Steph takes bad shots, and Steph's sometimes a little wild, and it's okay. It's part of the process. If you trust the coach, the roster, your defense, just like the Niners. Warriors defense, Niners defense. Warriors coaching, Niners coaching. I know it's football, basketball, apples, oranges. But I just feel like the Niners in the second half get tight. Breathe. Got good players, got good coaches, got good receivers, backs, tight ends. You got good pass rushers. This team's got studs everywhere. Let them play sometimes. So the Raiders are kind of a mess, and Derek Carr broke down yesterday. That's pretty tough. So they lost to Jeff Saturday and the Colts. Now, my first takeaway is sometimes you bring in a former player to a locker room like Jeff Saturday, and for a couple of weeks, Everybody's feeling big and alpha, and it can work. I've seen it work with Dan Campbell. Do I think Jeff Saturday is going to go down as Andy Reid? Probably not. He's smart enough, but it's hard to coach in this league. There's like 4 great coaches, maybe 6. I hear this. Colin, this was a playoff team last year. Barely, and so what? The Rams won the Super Bowl. They stink today. This isn't college football. It's the NFL. Half the playoff teams don't make it the following year. So what? Secondly, Derek Carr is to blame. Well, he's been average, 15th in the league. He's not been terrible. I mean, yesterday, Derek Carr, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 24 of 38, 100 passer rating. That wasn't the reason. Devontae Adams had 9 catches, 126 yards, a touchdown, a 50-yarder. That's not the reason. They get along fine. Let me throw this at you. Number 1 is new coach, new offensive system, and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow have been hurt. Renfro's a top 3 to 4 slot receiver, and Darren Waller's a top 2 or 3 tight end. They've both been hurt. So Devontae Adams is getting double-teamed a lot. People shading the coverage over, rolling the coverage over. It's something. A lot of good coaches in the NFL. They're taking away Devontae as much as they can. Secondly, the Raiders don't have a history in recent decades of a strong culture. So when you bring a Belichick assistant in, they're smart guys. They're not known as culture builders, the Belichick guys. So you have a bad culture, and it was a mess before Josh McDaniels got here, and a guy who's not known for building cultures, and maybe it just takes a year. I'll give you an example. Robert Saleh with the Jets. Jets, similarly, don't have a history of great cultures. They bring in a coach, Robert Saleh, who never built his own culture. Last year, the Jets were a mess. I mean, they were uneven. There were games looked like they didn't practice. Give it 12 months, give it 15 months. You'll watch the Jets this year, win or lose. He's sandpapered down the rough edges. You get the same Jets team, their strengths, their limitations every week. It took Saleh a year because this was not an organization known for great culture upstairs. Similarly, the Raiders, like the Jets, a lot of losing, a lot of weirdness, a lot of stuff that's unpredictable. They blow their coach out last year. Should have been blown out, got blown out. GM gets blown out. This is not an easy one. This is not the Chiefs with the Hunt family. This isn't, there's a lot of organizations. Not the Packers where Matt LaFleur inherits a lot of winning and Aaron Rodgers and a stable front office. The Jets and the Raiders, bit of a you-know-what upstairs. They come in, and the first year is choppy. I think the Raiders, injuries to stars with a new offense, Josh McDaniels trying to build this thing. I don't want to hear they made the playoffs. Half the teams that made the playoffs don't the following year. The Rams stink. But I think it's really hard when it's much easier. Matt LaFleur inherits the Packers or Andy inherits the Hunt family in Kansas City. That's a much easier gig than, Cliff Kingsbury goes down to Arizona. That's been a mess for a year. Steve Wilkes tried it, and that thing went sideways fast, and he couldn't overcome it. And then Cliff came into Arizona, and it looked like it may go sideways, and all of a sudden he gets his arms around it, and now it's going sideways again, and this stuff all starts upstairs. So the Raiders have the talent. You got Waller's out and Renfro's out, and one of Belichick's assistants is trying to build his old culture, and Robert Saleh last year took it down to the studs. I mean, there were multiple games last year. As a Jets fan, they looked awful. They beat Tennessee, and everybody's like, yeah, Jets were awful in half their games. But here's the thing I like. They're not bailing. Here's Derek Carr after. They're all in. They're just losing. Winning's hard in this league, and it's even harder when upstairs is a mess. And I think the Raiders will get it turned around. I'd feel a lot better as a Raider fan today than a Bronco fan. You gave me Broncos this morning and the Raiders. I'll take the Raiders. I'll take Derek Carr and those weapons and Josh McDaniel. I'll take the Raiders over Denver. Chargers, I like their GM and I like their quarterback, but I don't trust the Chargers in the big spot. They're not Kansas City. But again, Josh McDaniels didn't inherit a lot of the stuff that Kansas City brings to the table, a lot of stability. So sometimes Just take a deep breath. Not every problem and situation is solvable. I would take the Raiders in a heartbeat over Denver situation. I mean, they are trapped. They got 4 years. I mean, that Derek Carr, you're not paying that much money to. What does Denver do? And I'm not even sure. How come the Chargers have a defensive coach and their defense isn't generally very good? I don't know what's going on there. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.